Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, June 24th, 2026. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. We're going to start with Rastafarian cannot sue guard over shaved locks. High Court rules against religious rights case. A Supreme Court that has been increasingly protective of religious rights nonetheless ruled against a Rastafarian man who tried to sue Louisiana prison officials for damages after they forcibly shaved off his knee-length dreadlocks. Justice Neil Grosh wrote for the 6-3 majority on June 23rd that a federal law protecting prisoners' religious rights doesn't allow them to seek financial compensation if their rights are violated. And because they never agreed to answer suits like this one, Mr. Lander's case cannot proceed against them any more than a breach of contract action might proceed against a defendant who never formed a contract, Gorsuch wrote. While the court had been friendly to religious liberty claims, it had been hostile to lawsuits seeking damages against government officials. Attorneys for Damon Landor and the Department of Justice had argued that Landor, who is Rastafarian, had no other means to hold prison officials responsible once they cut off the knee-length locks he'd been growing for nearly a decade. In 2020, Landor was nearing the end of a 5-month sentence for drug possession when he was transferred to a new state facility in Louisiana. He showed prison officials a copy of a court ruling that said dreadlocks grown for religious reasons should be accommodated, as they were in previous prisons where he'd been detained. But an intake guard threw the ruling into the trash and called in the warden, according to court filings. When Landor couldn't immediately meet the warden's demand for court documentation affirming that he was Rastafarian, he was handcuffed to a chair and prison staff shaved off his dreadlocks. "My locks are a part of me and a part of who I am," Landor said in a statement to USA Today, recalling how he counted on his religion to help him survive incarceration. "So when they cut off my hair, they cut off my crown." Federal law is supposed to protect prisoners' religious rights. Landor should have been protected by the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, or RLUIPA, passed unanimously by Congress in 2000 to prevent state and local prisons from placing arbitrary or unnecessary restrictions on religious practices. 20 years after enactment, the DOJ said in a 2020 report, some institutions continue to impose substantial burdens on incarcerated people who are following the tenets of their religion. A variety of religious and civil liberty groups across the ideological spectrum backed Landor. In general, the justices have been increasingly protective of religious rights. In 2020, for example, the Supreme Court ruled that Muslim men who said their religious rights were violated for being placed on the government's no-fly list after refusing to serve as FBI informants could sue the FBI agents for damages. That case involved a similar federal law protecting religious expression, but because RLUIPA involves state institutions, it operates differently, Louisiana argued. While states agreed to follow federal rules when taking federal funding, that doesn't create a personal liability for prison workers, the state said. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson disagreed with the majority, comparing the decision to pulling a rabbit out of a hat, and was joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. Jackson wrote that Congress enacted the law at stake in the case to ensure prisoners a right to religious expression. But she said the majority adopted the peculiar position that Congress was powerless to create and states were powerless to accept a remedy of damages against officials who violated the directive. The severance of rights and remedies is a sleight of hand. It comes by way of the majority's full-throated endorsement of a contract analogy, even though what secures the rights at issue is not a contract but a law, Jackson wrote. Because I would not so trivialize a federal statute or the constitutional powers pursuant to which it was passed, I respectfully dissent. No one defended what happened, but justice points to a wider picture. During the November oral arguments in Lander v. Louisiana Department of Corrections and Public Safety, none of the justices defended what happened to Lander as valid. But Justice Amy Coney Barrett said the justices had to consider how their decision could affect other situations even outside of the religious rights of prisoners, in which public employees could be sued. Louisiana officials said the state has amended its grooming policy to prevent a repeat of Lander's ordeal. Savannah Guthrie, we cannot be at peace. Today, Anchor responds to Ransom Note News. Savannah Guthrie said her family remains in agony amid the continued search for her mother, Nancy Guthrie. The Today anchor shared new comments on the case on an NBC morning show on June 23rd after reports emerged that a second ransom note that had been sent to at least one media outlet in February claimed the 84-year-old was dead. After an NBC News segment sharing this new detail about the previously reported ransom note, an emotional Savannah Guthrie, sitting alongside her Today colleagues, said that she didn't have any comment on the story and is not involved in our coverage, but again urged viewers to share any information that may be useful in locating her missing mom. I can't pretend I'm not here, and since I am, I wanted to just take the opportunity to ask people, really to beg people to come forward, she said. Somebody knows something, and this is a news story today that is on your radar. But this is the life that my sister lives, that I live, that my brother lives, that our extended family live, that our children live every day, and we are in agony. We cannot be at peace. She continued, no matter how much I try to come out here every day and smile and find that joy, and I will, I promise I will, this is a moment to tell you that we need your help. We're begging for your help. And I'm not going to miss that opportunity. And so please, if you're watching, no matter how small, the reward is there. You can tell us. It can be anonymous. Please do the right thing for us, for our family, for our children. We love our mom and we'll never stop looking for her. Never. As she spoke, wiping away tears, Guthrie was joined at the desk by colleagues Al Roker, Carson Daly, and Jenna Bush Hager. Guthrie and Hager were both wearing black. Guthrie noted that the situation in which she is anchoring a news show that reports on her mother's disappearance is unusual and unprecedented. Craig Melvin applauded her for the bravery and courage which you have done this job every day since that happened, calling it nothing short of remarkable. Nancy Guthrie was last seen the evening of January 31st before her apparent kidnapping from her home north of Tucson, Arizona. In February, the FBI released images showing an armed person at her front door tampering with the camera, but the suspect in the images has not been identified. A reward totaling more than $1.2 million has been offered for information leading to her recovery. NBC News, ABC News, and CBS News reported the contents of the ransom note on June 22nd. NBC and ABC cited unnamed people familiar with the case, while CBS referred to sources who reviewed the notes. A spokesperson for the Pima County Sheriff's Department directed inquiries about the ransom note to the FBI. The office said in a statement, the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie remains active and ongoing. The Pima County Sheriff's Department continues to work closely with the FBI as investigators follow up on leads, review information, and pursue the facts surrounding this case. USA Today reached out to Savannah Guthrie's representatives and the FBI for comment. In March, Guthrie discussed ransom notes in an interview with longtime colleague Hoda Kobey shortly before resuming anchoring duties. There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came, and I think most of them, if it's my understanding, are not real, Guthrie told Kobey in a Today interview segment released March 26th. But I believe the two notes that we received that we responded to, I tend to believe that those were real. Pathways to enter the U.S. are shrinking. Drop in legal admissions could slow the economy. As President Donald Trump's administration cracks down on people entering the country illegally, new data shows legal pathways for immigration have also taken a dramatic hit. In 2025, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services approved 8.3 million applications compared with 11.4 million in 2024, a 27% decrease. Employment-based and humanitarian petitions made up the bulk of the change, dropping 26% and 69% respectively. Green card-related approvals dropped by 16%. On the other hand, family-based petition approvals were up 8%, and naturalization-related approvals held steady. Experts say the decreases can be long-lasting and can ripple through the U.S. economy. Immigrants are not just workers, they also create jobs. That's partly because they, like all of us, consume goods and services that create demand for jobs, said Julia Gaylett, the Associate Director of the U.S. Immigration Policy Program at the Migration Policy Institute. The State Department, which handles visa applications from abroad, has not released its full 2025 data, but the numbers through September show a similar picture. For example, international student visas issued fell 31% compared with the same time in 2024. Many people come to the United States as students, and some transition to work visas and later into permanent residence with green cards. A decrease in international students today will cascade into the future. If you cut off that pathway, you could see the impact of that for years to come, Gillette said. Beyond job and family-based routes, there's another pathway for people to enter the country, for humanitarian reasons. In fiscal year 2024, more than 100,000 people were admitted, but during Trump's second term, the cap was set to 7,500 for fiscal year 2026, the lowest in nearly half a century. So far, however, all but 3 of those admitted were white South Africans, the nonprofit progressive magazine Mother Jones reported. After the COVID-19 pandemic, almost half of the country's biggest cities were recording population declines. But by 2024, the trend had started to reverse in most places. Last year, however, marked another slowdown, which experts largely attributed to a decline in international migration. When the workforce starts to decline, that means less economic growth. That means less things that are produced, which means higher costs for consumers, said David Beer, Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. It's a real problem for the country that the administration has taken such a hard line even against legal immigration. Income earned by immigrants, documented and undocumented, also contributes to Social Security, even if most of them won't collect benefits. The Social Security Trust Fund, which supports more than 75,000 Americans, is projected to dry up in 2032. Already a legal backlash. Trump's second administration enacted multiple restrictions on legal immigration pathways. Student visas were canceled. The temporary protected status for migrants from countries with dangerous living conditions were cut. A $100,000 fee for H-1B work visas was imposed, and dozens of countries were placed on a travel ban list. Some of the restrictions were partially or fully reversed after public backlash and court challenges. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Many of the student visas were reinstated after cancellations sparked more than 100 lawsuits. After the announcement on the H-1B visa fee, companies and their workers were left scrambling on a frantic weekend to get them back to the country. This June, a judge struck down the $100,000 fee. Another judge halted other policies, saying the U.S. government threw the lives of countless immigrants living in the United States into indeterminate legal limbo by pausing asylum applications and work permits for people on a list of 39 countries under a travel ban. But even temporary changes could be detrimental, experts say, because they signal to people who want to come here that they might not be welcome. There's definitely a lot of backtracking, says Jeff Joseph, president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. The problem with that is the damage is done. You send out a memo to all your field offices basically saying this is how you exercise discretion, and it's hard to turn that message off. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, did not immediately respond to the request for comment. Trump had campaigned on border and immigration control, but also had defended the need for foreign workers. Border Patrol encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border continued to drop during Trump's second term, while the number of people on immigration detention rose sharply, particularly for people with no criminal record, according to USA Today's immigration tracker. I think they did that efficiently and quickly and effectively, but what I don't think people expected or anticipated or voted for, frankly, is the attack on legal immigration system, Joseph said. Too late to reverse course? An early analysis from Beer found that legal immigration declined 2.5 times faster than illegal entries did in the first 3 quarters of 2024. An entirely new administration with a new ideology and a new goal for the immigration system is not going to be able to undo all of the concerns people will have about coming here, Beer said. But beyond the public perception, USCIS, the agency that processes petitions for employment authorizations, green cards, and citizenship applications, has been affected by workforce reductions in early 2025. CBS reported in February 2025 that 50 workers who processed applications were among the layoffs. Through 2025, the application backlog increased, leaving it 48% higher than at the end of former President Joe Biden's term. The processing times for petitions has also risen across every category. The application front log, which includes unopened applications, peaked at nearly 250,000 in 2025, up from 0 before the second Trump administration began. Each of those envelopes also usually contain payment for processing fee for that application, Gillette said. So USCIS wasn't even opening the envelopes to get the money that funds its operation. It just suggests an agency that's not performing as well as it could be performing. Unlike most agencies that rely on taxpayer money, USCIS relies on filing fees for 96% of its budget. You're setting yourselves up for a situation in which people don't want to come to the United States anymore because the U.S. government is unreliable, Beer said. I think the United States reputation is really taking a blow here. Judge orders Kennedy Center to remain open. Is the Kennedy Center still open? That's what a federal judge ordered, and it's what the Arts Center's board of mostly supporters of President Donald Trump said is happening. but don't expect to see Les Miserables anytime soon. The building's facade remained shrouded beneath the tarp after U.S. District Judge Christopher Cooper ordered the removal of Trump's name. Cooper also ordered the center to remain open beyond its scheduled closing July 5th for 2 years of renovation, but it's unclear when performances may resume. Matt Floca, Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer, said in a court filing that the center will maintain an operational model past July 5th, allowing for continued public access. Educational and community outreach programming will also be maintained, Floca said. Given present uncertainty as to the future programming, management has deferred affirmative long-term programming or staffing adjustments until the board selects a final operational path. The drama surrounding the Kennedy Center, beyond the performances staged inside, began after Congress approved $258 million to renovate the building. The center's board added Trump's name to the facade and its website as he adopted the project as one of his priorities. But that change sparked a lawsuit from Representative Joyce Beatty, Democrat, Ohio, who serves on the board, because Congress named the Kennedy Center in the statute operating it in 1964. Before the construction project, the Kennedy Center had announced performances of Back to the Future and Mrs. Doubtfire for July and August, but the renovations later prompted the board to halt all productions. Under Cooper's order, the center managers planned to meet with the board in mid-July to vote on how to move forward on construction, according to a Justice Department filing June 19th. Options include hosting no programming, closing parts of the building to allow for limited programming, or scheduling a limited series of closures around the building while a full slate of programming continues. The center management currently intends for the center and its building to maintain an operational model past the originally planned closure date of July 5th, the Justice Department filing said. The center continues to prepare for additional capital repair and construction activities. Legal fight over adding Donald Trump's name continues. Meanwhile, a court appeal over the removal of Trump's name trudges along. The actual removal of Trump's name from the facade was accomplished June 13th in the early morning hours after Cooper's deadline of the previous day. But the front of the building remains hidden by curtains while the marble wall is repaired. Justice Department lawyers asked the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals for an emergency order to halt the removal of Trump's name. Despite an initial rejection, the request remains to restore Trump's name. Government lawyers argued that without his name on the building, fundraising from corporations that contributed millions will not only come to a halt, but any and all monies raised or committed would be obligated to be returned, refunded, or terminated. In a filing June 22nd, Beatty's lawyers called the appeal frivolous and ludicrous and argued that Trump couldn't withhold funding because his name was removed from the building. A trustee cannot create a poison pill to sabotage a trust should courts prevent him from defying the law, the filing said. Trump may not use voter database. Federal judge cites privacy accuracy fears. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from using a database of American Social Security numbers and citizenship status, saying the administration has knowingly given inaccurate data to states that are now actively and haphazardly purging purported non-citizens from voter rolls. The federal government has knowingly trampled on the privacy rights of American citizens in a manner that threatens the sacred right to vote, U.S. District Judge Sparkle Sukanen wrote in a 75-page ruling. This court cannot stand idly by while that happens. The White House referred USA Today to the Department of Homeland Security, which did not immediately respond to requests for comment. ruling in a lawsuit brought by the League of Women Voters and other advocacy groups. Suchanan, a Biden appointee, said the Trump administration's newly modified Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements SAVE system combined citizenship data and other sensitive data with information from the Social Security Administration to create a clearinghouse that Congress has expressly prohibited. Since his second term began, President Donald Trump has made several sweeping efforts to overhaul American elections, many of which have been stymied by federal judges. For example, the administration demanded full voter rolls from dozens of states and has lost 9 lawsuits against states when it tried to enforce the demand. Suchanan stated that the federal agencies were working to comply with the March 25, 2025 executive order, which instructed the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration to create a system for state and local officials to verify immigration status of registered voters or of people registering to vote. Other key provisions of the executive order are already blocked in separate court rulings. The order led to the overhaul of the Department of Homeland Security SAVE system, which was modified to include the records of natural-born citizens, to access Social Security information, including Social Security numbers, and to permit states and other entities with access to conduct bulk searches of records. Suchanan found that the newly modified system violates several privacy laws, including the Social Security Act of 1935, which prohibits the disclosure of Social Security numbers and other information, and the Privacy Act of 1974, which prevents the non-consensual disclosure of certain information by and between federal agencies. Despite concerns about the accuracy of the records in the new system, Suchanan said, the administration shared the database with states which used it on their rolls. Since then, states have run their voter rolls through the modified SAVE system, and some of the plaintiffs' members have been wrongfully identified as non-citizens by SAVE, resulting in the cancellation of their voting registrations, Suchanan wrote. The coalition of groups associated with the lawsuit praised the ruling. It protects voters from being caught up in an unlawful and error-prone system that could lead to wrongful voter removals and baseless investigations, said Joan Port, president of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. No one should have to worry that inaccurate records or bureaucratic mistakes could jeopardize their registration. Ageless Jonathan the Tortoise snags award. Jonathan the Tortoise, the ancient reptile mistakenly declared dead back on April Fool's Day, is not only alive but has earned another accolade. Born before 1832, thus he's at least 194 years old. Jonathan is the oldest living land animal and has been named a Guinness World Records icon, the organization said June 17th. A Seychelles giant tortoise, estimated to have been at least 50 years old in 1882 when he was brought to the South Atlantic island of St. Helena, Jonathan is likely even older, as his age is a conservative estimate according to Guinness. The average life expectancy of his species is 150 years. Jonathan was a gift to the future governor of St. Helena, a British overseas territory, and has lived on the grounds of the governor's residence, the Plantation House Mansion, according to the Smithsonian Magazine. In a video posted on social media platform X by the Guinness World Records, Jonathan appears to give the GWR Icon Award a quick glance and then move on. The oldest known terrestrial animal, Jonathan was stalking the planet before the first photographs, 1838, and telephone calls were made, 1876, and before the completion of the Eiffel Tower, 1887, Guinness notes. Amid April Fool's Day earlier this year, there was false claims that Jonathan's death on social media. That didn't seem to bother old Jono, as he's referred to locally. He happily spends his days with 3 other tortoises in the gardens of the governor's residence, eating grass and basking in the sunshine, Guinness says. Jonathan has met royalty, starred in wedding photographs, and delighted tourists, says St. Helena Governor Nigel Phillips in a news release. He is a symbol of the enduring resilience of this island and its commitment to protecting the environment. It is entirely appropriate that he has his home, the paddock of the governor's residence. He is very much the brightest icon of this jewel. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today, the USA Today, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. As one of Guinness World Record icons, Jonathan joins a select group of record holders whose achievements have transcended their field and inspired people across the globe, Guinness said in the release. We're proud to call these extraordinary individuals GWR icons. Here are record holders who've transcended their records to become part of global culture, said Craig Glenday, editor-in-chief at the Guinness World Records, in the news release. It's not always about celebrating the single superlative moment. With the icons, it's about recognizing and honoring the long-lasting impact these inspirational people leave on the world. New Guinness World Record icons. The other Guinness World Record icons named June 17th by the organization were humans. John Cena, USA, the most WWE Championship titles, 17. Shohei Ohtani, Japan, first 50 home run, 50 stolen base season, 2024. Christina Cook, USA, longest space flight by a woman, 328 days, 13 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. Blackpink, South Korea, most streamed female group on Spotify with 16,948,431,011 streams. Hilda Bassi, Nigeria, longest cooking marathon, 93 hours and 11 minutes. Hari Buddha Megar, MBE, Nepal, United Kingdom, first double above knee amputee to climb the 7 summits. Now, in the money section of the USA Today, we are going to do the 50 states. Highlighted in this article is Florida. Merritt Island. NASA officials looked on as the agency's Pegasus barge creeped into the Kennedy Space Center turn basin, carrying a space telescope with a field of vision 100 times larger than the Hubble Space Telescope. Meet the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, due to launch later this summer. Named for NASA's first chief astronomer, the mother of the Hubble Space Telescope, the telescope left Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, and traveled more than 800 miles aboard NASA's Pegasus barge, arriving at Kennedy Space Center on June 21st. The Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope is set to be more powerful than the Hubble Space Telescope, which has been in orbit since 1990. Alabama, Northport. A small elm tree now stands on the grounds of the Synergetic Center in Northport. The tree is a symbol of the American Revolution and the nation's defiance of England. It is the spiritual descendant of the Liberty Elm, which once stood on Boston Common. Alaska, Juneau. The Juneau Assembly has declared a local emergency ahead of this summer's expected glacial outburst flood, enabling protective measures and requesting state support, KTOO reported. Arizona, Benson. A contentious proposal to build an aluminum recycling plant has been halted following fierce opposition from residents. Aluminum Dynamics Incorporated, owned by Indiana-based corporation Steel Dynamics Incorporated, announced it will cease developing its secondary smelter in Benson and instead look elsewhere to build the plant. Arkansas, Little Rock. Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin said the state has sued Roblox and Discord, accusing both companies of endangering children by using deceptive practices and failing to put adequate safety protection in place, KARK reported. California, Salinas. The famous towering sculptures that celebrate Mexican artistry are coming to the city later this summer for a month-long art exhibition. Abrijes and Nujales, Fantastic Animals from Mexico, features 8 20-foot colorful animal sculptures crafted in Mexico and beginning July 31st will be placed in spaces throughout Salinas. Colorado, Fort Collins. Touchmark, a privately owned retirement community developer and operator based in Beaverton, Oregon, broke ground on its new Fort Collins facility. The new retirement community is expected to open in late 2028. Connecticut. Mulmactic. Community Health Resources is launching a mobile opioid treatment program to serve Northeast Connecticut. The Mobile Pathways program will bring personalized, recovery-focused treatments to people struggling with opioid use disorders, according to an announcement. Delaware, Smyrna. The Delaware agency that tests water, air, and soil to try to protect people and animals has opened a state-of-the-art laboratory to improve the quality and quantity of those tests. On June 18th, the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control celebrated the opening of its environmental lab in Smyrna near the Delaware Hospital for the Chronically Ill and the Division of Public Health Laboratory. District of Columbia, Washington. The Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool on Washington's National Mall is set to be drained again for repairs just weeks after the $14.7 million renovation, local media reported. Georgia, Oconee County. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources awarded Oconee County a $3 million grant that will go toward the upgrading of facilities and a major land expansion of Oconee Heritage Park, according to a notice from the county. Hawaii, Honolulu. The University of Hawaii received more than $12 million from the National Institutes of Health to launch a new AI-driven medical research center aimed at advancing biomedical science and improving health outcomes across Hawaii and the Pacific, Hawaiian News Now reported. Idaho, Boise. A new report from the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy says that $4.5 billion in state and federal income tax cuts since 2018 have overwhelmingly benefited Ohio's highest earning households, while the lowest income families are now paying slightly more in taxes, Idaho Capital Sun reported. Illinois, Springfield. Illinois broke its annual tornado record June 17th as several severe storms ravaged their way across the state, according to AccuWeather. AccuWeather reported that Illinois reached a preliminary count of 145 tornadoes in 2026, just two shy of the 147 finalized reports in 2025. This made Illinois the state with the most preliminary tornado reports in 2026 by nearly double. Indiana, Bloomington. The city of Bloomington plans to pay a contractor $38,300 to clean up trash left in a former homeless camp on the city's west side and to prepare the area for a new public trail. Iowa, Des Moines. Since going online in 2024, Des Moines' first freestanding city solar field has produced more than 1,800 megawatts of electricity, enough to power 280 homes for a year, according to a recent social media post from the city. The electricity produced by the solar field has avoided over 1,527 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions, city officials said in the Facebook post. Kansas, Lawrence. The University of Kansas, Kansas State University, Wichita State, and 3 other Regent universities are set to charge more in tuition, fees, or both for the 2026-2027 academic year after the Kansas Board of Regents voted unanimously to approve their proposals. Kentucky, Louisville. A contentious meeting of the Louisville Air Pollution Control Board on June 17th crescendoed into sharp criticism of the city's top air quality regulator before a deputy mayor scolded community members and called the meeting an unsafe environment. Louisiana, Monroe. Miss Louisiana Port City Shelby Bordelon was crowned Miss Louisiana 2026 and will represent the state at the Miss America competition August 28th to September 6th in West Palm Beach, Florida. Maine, Augusta. A report found Maine 14th out of all states on a number of factors that impact life satisfaction, ranking high on the environment and civil liberties, but low on measures such as children and families, economic output, and mental health, Maine Morning Star reported. Maryland, Crisfield. Maryland officials approved $29.7 million to upgrade critical infrastructure at Summers Cave Marina in Crisfield, a project expected to address aging facilities and reduce flooding risks. Massachusetts, Dudley. In an attempt to get badly needed revenue into Dudley, the town is seeking an agreement with Nichols College for an annual payment in lieu of taxes, but the college so far has been unresponsive. Michigan, Lansing. Michigan State Police will close its 50-year-old Northville Forensic Science Laboratory because of roughly $20 million in repair and maintenance costs expected over the next several years. Minnesota, St. Paul. Senator Amy Klobuchar, the presumptive Democratic farmer labor nominee for Minnesota governor, has continued to expand her fundraising advantage over her 3 Republican opponents, with nearly 7 times their combined cash on hand, according to campaign finance data, Michigan Reformer reported. Mississippi, Pearl. The Central Mississippi Correctional Facility cut the ribbon for its new Barber College on June 17th, introducing another vocational program to the prison's population. Missouri, Columbia. The black bear population in the state has reached about 1,000 and is expanding beyond its core range in the Ozarks, according to a community announcement. Montana, Laurel. State officials have finalized plans to build a 32-bed forensic hospital on Laurel's outskirts despite nearly a year of neighborhood opposition over safety concerns and its proximity to homes and a nearby elementary school, the Daily Montanan reported. Nebraska, Norfolk. The Norfolk Police Division said a man is facing charges after contacting them to report he had assaulted his girlfriend and was turning himself in, KTIV reported. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes past the hour. Nevada, Reno. Nevada Energy said a fast-moving brush fire in Sparks caused power outages June 16th for nearly 70,000 customers, including some as far as 20 miles from the flames. The news outlet reported that no structures were lost in the 100-acre fire, which was 100% contained by June 17th, according to Watch Duty, a non-profit alert system that tracks fires. New Hampshire, Exeter. A developer's plan to build 34 townhomes and 300 apartments in 2 4-story buildings on 36.6 acres of undeveloped land has been rejected by the town zoning board. New Jersey, Camden. Paul Robbins, 101, was honored at the Battleship, New Jersey, June 15th, as the last known surviving member of its original crew. Wow. New Mexico, Tortuga. The Shrine and Parish of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Tortuga is hosting the annual San Juan Fiesta Turtle Fest, June 26th through 28th, celebrating the theme All-American Turtle Derby. New York, Albany. Governor Kathy Hochul announced that nearly 3 million residents will receive more than $2 billion in property tax relief this summer and fall through the state's school tax relief program. North Carolina, Asheville. UNC Health has announced a proposed expansion to its system with a new 92-bed acute care hospital in Asheville called UNC Health West. North Dakota, Fargo. After an area youth's family reported his fishing pole stolen while fishing by the river, KVRR reported that the Fargo police officers pooled their own money to provide Theodore Jensen with a new fishing pole, gear, and gift cards provided by North Dakota State University and Shields. Jensen will also go on a fishing trip with professional fisherman Spencer Dutz, according to the news outlet. Ohio, Millersburg. After 33 years of service, Holmes County Sheriff Tim Zimmerly will retire effective July 31st, shortening his term that would have ended January 2029. Voters will elect a new sheriff on the November 2026 general election ballot. Oklahoma City. Oklahoma County Assessor Larry Stein's worries over smart glasses led the County Handbook Committee to add a prohibition on taking photographs, videos, or otherwise recording images of sensitive or confidential documents at its meeting June 3rd. Stein said the glasses, like Ray-Ban Meta and Oakley Meta Vanguard, pose a threat to confidential records and privacy. Oregon, Eugene. Eugene School District 4J has discontinued its free summer meal program due to budget constraints. Communications Director Katie McIver said the district's free summer meals program costs $250,000 to operate annually, and federal reimbursements have dropped. Oh, that's sad. Pennsylvania, Newtown. Bucks County Community College plans to close its Early Learning Center in early August for financial reasons, the college president and CEO Patrick Jones said in an email to parents. Rhode Island, Providence. In June, Rhode Island's General Assembly approved the state budget, including in it $5 million as seed money for a medical school at the University of Rhode Island. Designated from fiscal 2027, The money will fund the hiring of a dean and senior leadership, recruitment of faculty and administrative staff, preparing for accreditation, and planning for curriculum and institutional development. The Senate anticipates spending $15 million more over the next 2 fiscal years. South Dakota, Sioux Falls, as a special celebration for America's 250, the Sioux Empire Fair organizers announced that they will put on their first ever fireworks show on opening night. The event on July 31st will be reduced admission for sneak peek night, an opportunity to be one of the first on rides and in the barns. Fireworks will be viewed from the grandstand and begin at dusk. Tennessee, Jackson. Miss Texas volunteer Amanda Higginbottom took home the crown and a $50,000 scholarship as Miss Volunteer America 2027 on June 20th at the Carl Perkins Civic Center. Becoming the pageant's 5th winner, she was one of 51 contestants. Texas, Abilene. Abimar Foods has announced plans to invest $15 million to expand and modernize 2 of its 3 Abilene facilities, according to a media release from the Development Corporation of Abilene. The project includes increasing automation and upgrading equipment designed to enhance production capacity and better support the company's growth strategy. Utah, Ogden. City officials imposed level orange fire restrictions and banned fireworks in high-risk areas across Ogden ahead of the 4th of July following several large weekend wildfires, KUTV reported. Vermont, Shelburne. Norman Rockwell at Home in Vermont, which opened June 20th and runs through October 25th at Shelburne Museum's Pizzagalli Center for the Art and Education, will display 40 of the 175 covers Rockwell created for the Saturday Evening Post magazine during his time in Vermont between 1939 and 1953. Virginia, Staunton. Artist Aggie Zed brings the imaginative world of etceteras, Aggie Zed paintings and sculptures, to Gallery 22. The exhibit will run June 26th through August 9th. Washington, Seattle. Officials are investigating flooding on a retired 165-foot ferry, the Skansoya King 5 reported. The news outlet said crews are removing water from the vessel and no injuries were reported. West Virginia, Lewisburg. All 181 members of the West Virginia School of Osteopathic Medicine's class of 2026 secured physician residency positions, marking the 4th consecutive year the school has achieved 100% residency placement rate, West Virginia News reported. Wisconsin, Appleton. Downtown Appleton will get a second Petway station to make it easier for pet owners to do their part in cleaning up after their pets. The new Petway station will be installed in a planter. Wyoming, Jackson. Teton County Public Health Director Travis Rydell told KHOL 89.1 that the county is exploring options to test for chronic wasting disease in the town's water. The disease was detected on the National Elk Refuge in May, the news outlet reported. Auto jobs lost due to EVs cause concern. Electric cars have long been seen as the future of the American auto industry, and they've experienced a slight resurgence as drivers recoiled from the record high gas prices in recent months. But some in the auto industry have harbored fears about potential job losses if drivers in the United States switch en masse to EVs. EVs accounted for 7.8% of new auto sales in the United States in 2025, down from 8.1% in 2024, Kelley Blue Book estimated. Automakers were once projected to produce at least 4.7 million electric cars by 2028, according to the Environmental Defense Fund. But many manufacturers have recently cut back on their EVs plans in the past year as the Trump administration has rolled back federal support for the technology in many ways. Fears about the transition's impact on American jobs have persisted, despite changes in consumers' attitude toward EVs and the federal government's support levels. One of the most vexing social challenges confronting the transition to EVs at scale is dealing with the effects that governmental EV transition policies will have on millions of jobs across a wide swath of industry. Robert Sherritt, a contributing editor to the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers Spectrum magazine, wrote in a 2023 article. By some estimates, upwards of 80,000 auto workers and a similar number in the auto supply chain have already been laid off globally to support the EV transition, he continued. The USA Today CARS team looked at why there are concerns about the impact of the transition to EV on the auto job market. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, June 24th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore. Have a wonderful day.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Claudia. Our Heat team to beat in East with Giannis. It took 6 years to get here. It took whiffing on Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant twice, Kyrie Irving twice, James Harden, Bradley Beal twice, Chris Paul, DeMar DeRozan, and yes, even Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yet with a midnight blockbuster on June 22nd that ships Antetokounmpo to the... We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Claudia. Our Heat team to beat in East with Giannis. It took 6 years to get here. It took whiffing on Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant twice, Kyrie Irving twice, James Harden, Bradley Beal twice, Chris Paul, DeMar DeRozan, and yes, even Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yet with a midnight blockbuster on June 22nd that ships Antetokounmpo to the Miami Heat, team president Pat Riley proved again he can deliver a hoops wonder to Bayside. With that, he appeased a fan base that had started to grumble and wonder if it was time for him to step down. The hard work begins. Make no mistake, this move triggers immense pressure. With Antetokounmpo in the fold, the expectation becomes that Miami is to compete for a championship. There's precedent for that, too. Since Riley took over the franchise, each acquisition of a legitimate superstar in their prime, from Shaquille O'Neal in 2004 to LeBron James and Chris Bosh in 2010 to Jimmy Butler in 2019, has produced trips to the finals at a minimum. Those moves delivered the franchise's 3 championships, and Butler was the lone addition unable to win a title. So does this make the Heat the favorites to win the Eastern Conference? No, at least not yet. Antetokounmpo, provided he stays healthy, makes Miami far more dangerous than it would have been under its previous roster construction. But does he catapult the Heat over the Knicks or a healthy Pacers or Celtics? Antetokounmpo shrinks the gap, certainly, but the retooled roster still has massive holes. For one, the Heat desperately needed shooting. Norman Powell, the 2026 All-Star shooting guard, is an unrestricted free agent, and the Heat would love to re-sign him. He's a career 39.6% three-point shooter, and Antetokounmpo's gravity would only help create more space for him. But even if Miami is able to swing his return, the Heat will still need to add reliable snipers along the perimeter. They'll have to do it on the cheap, too. After all, the Heat did gut their roster somewhat, so they'll have to replenish depth, especially at guard and center. The Heat will need Andrew Wiggins to decline his $30.2 million player option with the hopes that he re-signs on a friendlier arrangement to open up cap space. Because if there's one thing the last 2 NBA champions have proved, it's that depth is essential, particularly if injuries mount. Miami will also need coach Eric Spoelstra, widely considered one of the premier minds in the sport, to get in the lab and cook up a scheme that highlights Antetokounmpo's transition of offense and passing ability. He will have to find ways to expand Captain Bam Adebayo's portfolio, the Heat project, to be an exceptional defense team. Adebayo and Antetokounmpo instantly become the top rim-protecting duo in the conference, and players like Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, Drew Smith, Pelle Larsson, and Bobby Portis, also acquired in the Bucks trade, embody grit and defensive toughness. He keeps demanding that I land a whale, Riley told the Le Batard show in February during the Miami Heat Gala when asked about Heat owner Mickey Arison. I might be out there looking, but I got a guy in the chair back there with a big harpoon, and that's Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations Andy Ellsberg. And once I identify it, he goes shwoop, Riley continued while arching his hand in a fishing motion. Riley and Ellsberg caught the one that had long eluded them, but the job is not done. Not close to it. From survival to surge, the WNBA celebrates its 30th birthday. The Las Vegas Aces and Phoenix Mercury were 5 seconds from overtime in Game 3 of the 2025 WNBA Finals at Mortgage Matchup Center, with the score tied at 88 and Las Vegas with possession. Phoenix needed to defend in regulation to avoid a 3-0 series deficit. 4-time WNBA MVP A'ja Wilson had other plans. She cut across the paint to catch an inbound pass from Chelsea Gray. Wilson stopped at the top of the elbow, where she was met by an Alyssa Thomas DeWanna Bonner double team. Wilson sized up Bonner and dribbled toward the basket with a Mercury forward plaster to her right shoulder. Her next move was generations in the making. Wilson stopped, pivoted, and launched a fadeaway jumper over Thomas and Bonner. Her shot dramatically ping-ponged around the rim before it bounced in, quietly carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire league that had worked decades for that moment. Still, the 6'4" center didn't stop to celebrate. She jogged toward the other end with her mouth agape and her tongue out. Moments after Wilson's shot fell, she clapped. Her clap was so loud and forceful amid a noticeably stunned Mortgage Matchup Center that it could be heard several feet above the court. Wilson was clapping for herself and her team, but also applauding for the many players who had come before her and those in the future. To see that I'm now a huge print on this league, it's just been surreal, Wilson told USA Today Sports. My thing is just like, how can I be great? How can I continue to lay the path down for the next generation? Because the path was laid down for me no matter how easy or how hard it was. As the WNBA celebrates its 30th anniversary, the once fledgling league has evolved from its 1997 launch into a global fixture in women's sports. The WNBA is a thriving league, backed by record attendance, rising salaries, and unprecedented media attention. That foundation was built by trailblazers like Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Rebecca Lobo, and Lisa Leslie, whose elite talent and credibility legitimized the league. The league was carried forward by other icons such as Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, Sue Bird, and Tamika Catchings, who elevated the standard of excellence. Today's stars like Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Caitlin Clark, and Paige Buchers are pushing the game to new heights. Still, they stand on the shoulders of generations who fought for investment, respect, and opportunity. I knew that we had to lay a solid foundation in order for the WNBA and little girls to be able to dream of playing professional basketball, and now we're here, said Cooper, who helped the Houston Comets win the first 4 league titles. To see the talented athletes like the Aja Wilsons and the Caitlin Clarks and the Angel Reeses, and now the new talent coming in with Lauren Betts coming in and Ozzie Fudd, it's just growing and growing, and I can't stand myself. I'm like, yes, I was a part of this right from the beginning, and to see it flourish and the new CBA agreement, I'm just over the moon. I'm super excited, not just for 30 years of the WNBA, but the next 30 years. The next 30 years is what I'm super excited about. WNBA growth reaches new heights. Growth and interest in women's college basketball, and in turn the WNBA, can be traced to the 2024 WNBA draft class. Clark set the all-time NCAA scoring record for men and women, hitting logo three-pointers, and carried millions of fans to the next level. She was joined by other top names like LSU star Angel Reese and Stanford standout Cameron Brink in leading significant change. To deal with the influx of star power and a growing need that could no longer be ignored, the WNBA announced full-time charter flights for teams. For the previous 28 seasons, players had flown commercial. By July of the same year, the league signed an 11-year media rights package worth $2.2 billion with Disney, NBC, and Amazon. It would later add USA Network, Paramount, Scripps, and NBA TV to its growing media partners, pushing the reported value to more than $3 billion. League expansion fees, which were reportedly $50 million for a future Toronto franchise and $75 million for a Portland team, ballooned to $250 million for Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, all set to debut by 2030. There are so many people who are getting into this world and talking about it and having platforms and places to have these conversations. It's so different, Bird said. That has been the biggest difference from year one to now. It's just how many people, even if I'm just walking down the street or I'm somewhere socially, people are talking about the WNBA in a totally different way. The narratives have changed around this sport, around this league, and it's really wonderful to see. In August 2025, the league set a single-season attendance record with 13 franchises welcoming more than 2.5 million fans over 226 games. By the end of the season, the WNBA had delivered record-breaking viewership numbers as well. It was the most watched regular season and postseason across ESPN networks. During the 25 regular season games, matchups averaged 1.3 million viewers. Across 24 postseason games, There was an average of 1.2 million. The playoffs were the most viewed since 1999, the third season of the W. The 2025 season also welcomed the Golden State Valkyries, the WNBA's first expansion team since 2008. Golden State sold out all 22 of its home games, averaging 18,064 fans per matchup. The Valkyries also set a WNBA record for most wins by an expansion team in a debut season, 23, and were the first expansion franchise to make the playoffs. Golden State has since become the W's first franchise, valued at nearly $1 billion. I know it's something that I take with me for all time. It's just a prideful moment. I will also say I'm more excited for us to be one of many, which I think is on the horizon. Valkyries president Jess Smith said, "I know that this is a moment that many people have been looking for in continued growth of women's sports, and it has been a long time coming. It's still the beginning in so many different ways. WNBA creates groundbreaking CBA. The success of the last few seasons was all the Women's National Basketball Players Association, WNBPA, needed as proof that they deserved more. An 18-month battle with the league to carve out a new CBA is what ensued. In October 2024, the association opted out of the 2020 CBA, paving the way for a new agreement. The players and league, as often happens in labor negotiations, were far apart on a list of items including revenue share, salary cap, and housing. 9 months into negotiations, tensions reached a boiling point when players wore "Pay Us What You Owe Us" shirts at the 2025 All-Star Game. One of the main items on the All-Star Weekend agenda was a face-to-face meeting between players and the league about the CBA. Multiple players in attendance said the meeting did not go well. "We should be paid more, and hopefully that's the case moving forward as the league continues to grow," Clark said at the time. "I think that's important. That's probably the most important thing that we are in the room advocating about." Talks continued for another 9 months, leading to countless revisions to the proposed CBA by both sides. The stalemate came dangerously close to impacting the start of the 2026 season, prompting a feverish push. On March 18, 2026, following more than 8 days and 100 hours of face-to-face meetings, the landmark CBA was agreed to in principle. It was lauded as transformational by the WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and WNBPA President Nika Agwumpke, for it is, in a way, not just for today, but for tomorrow and the years to come. It's not just about what we see written in the agreement, it's also about the lives that built this league and are growing this league that are changing. Wamke said the new CBA, which runs through 2032, included a $7 million salary cap and a $1.4 million supermax salary, quadrupling the previous number. The cap will be adjusted annually based on league and team growth. Minimum salaries were increased from $67,000 to $300,000. Max salaries are expected to exceed $2.4 million by 2032. I can't even tell you how giddy I was when the CBA was done. WNBA Hall of Famer Swin Cash, who won 3 WNBA titles with the Detroit Shock and Seattle Storm, told USA Today, "I was just happy waiting, like, who's signing that first $1 million contract? Like, what's up? And I'm not getting a dime from it, but I can sit here and be happy for those who are." Cash got her answer quickly. On April 9th, Aces guard Jackie Young became the first WNBA player to finalize a $1 million contract, reportedly worth $1.19 million, joining a list of 30 players making $1 million in 2026. Later in the month, Wilson would sign the largest deal in WNBA history, a 3-year Supermax contract worth $5 million. 2 days after Wilson's deal, the Indiana Fever and center Aaliyah Boston agreed to a 4-year contract extension through the league's new exceptional performance on initial contract epic provision. Boston's deal was reportedly worth $6.3 million, making it the largest total salary in league history. In 2026, Boston is set to make $1 million and will earn 20% of the salary cap each season through 2029. You think about history books and those historical moments. This will go into a history book. It will be a historical moment for women's sports, said Catchings, a 5-time Defense Player of the Year. Not just the WNBA, but for women's sports. We will read about this. Our kids will read about this one day. That part, to me, that gives me chills just thinking about it. Celebrating 30 years with the new CBA ratified, the WNBA sprinted to begin the 2026 season and celebrating 30 years of women's professional basketball in the USA. The league was born on April 24, 1996, after the NBA Board of Governors approved the concept of the WNBA. "We got next," women's basketball said with an inaugural campaign featuring now Hall of Famers swoopers Leslie and Lobo. The first game tipped off on June 21st, 1997 at the Great Western Forum in Inglewood, California, between the New York Liberty and Los Angeles Sparks. Sparks guard Penny Toller scored the first points in the WNBA history at the 19:01 mark of the first quarter, paving the way for hundreds of players to come. It also served as a launching pad for dynasties to come, like the Comets and Minnesota Lynx, who all have 4 titles apiece. My eyes just tear up, and I think the reason being is because I feel this wow moment of, we really did it, Swoops told USA Today. As many people who had doubts had said, yeah, here we go again. We kept our heads down and we just worked. Before the WNBA's launch in 1997, several leagues tried and failed to establish a lasting product. The Women's Professional Basketball League, WBL, ran from 1978 to 1981 but struggled with financial instability and limited exposure. The Ladies Professional Basketball Association, LPBA, arrived in 1980 and was meant to be a rival to the WBL. However, the LPBA lasted for less than a month before it folded. Even the American Basketball League, ABL, which debuted in 1996 and boasted higher salaries, lasted less than 3 seasons before it declared bankruptcy. We did all the things, and when I say we, I'm talking about from the very beginning to where we are now. Every player that's ever come through this league, Swoops added. It makes me a bit emotional, only because I don't know if I even thought that we would be in the moment we're in. The excitement, the new CBA, the money, the eyes, the brands, the sponsorships, the deals, the chatter, everybody has finally caught on and said, okay, this thing here called women's basketball is pretty damn good. On June 21st of 2026, the Liberty and Sparks will meet again on the anniversary of the league's first game. Perhaps the result of the game will be different. New York won 67-57 the first time, but the ticket prices, at least for some seats, are being rolled back to $5.50 to celebrate. The faces in the game have also changed. Instead of Toller, there's Kelsey Plum. Leslie has been replaced by Ogua Mike, another Sparks stable. Lobo, who once was a star for the Liberty, will call the game as a broadcaster. Stewart will now be on Liberty's side in her place. The matchup will be held at Crypto.com Arena with a capacity just over 19,000. What won't have changed is the league's level of talent. Just ask one of its all-time greats. A point of emphasis in any sports league is 30 years. That's how usually they judge growth, and so I thought it was unfair that they were judging the WNBA way sooner than a lot of the other 5 major men's sports leagues, said Candace Parker, who will be enshrined in the Hall of Fame this year. We all knew that this was possible. Anybody that laced up a shoe knew that the WNBA had a place, and as a result of the ownership taken by players, brands, NIL, social media, has helped with where we set in the 30th season. This was possible. It was just about the investment and the visibility. If investment and visibility helped in the first 30 years, what do the next 30 years look like? The next generation of stars can already see what's possible. Just a continued respect and growth and an abundance of national TV coverage, TV deals, advanced CBA negotiations, women making millions of dollars, and salary cap increasing, revenue share increasing. Booker said, just everything increasing, everything doubling, everything tripling, everything going up as the years go by, and then just a continued love for the game and a passion and a respect amongst all women's sports. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time's 15 minutes after the hour. Oklahoma finishes improbable run to World Series title. Seconds after relief pitcher Jackson Cleveland fired a fastball into catcher Deaton LeChance's glove for the final out of the collegiate baseball season, Oklahoma coach Skip Johnson didn't think for 1 second. The Sooners' 9th-year leader immediately made the rounds at Charles Schwab Field to his coaches, players, administration, players' parents, the people who made this program a family-owned business, as he always says. To thank and bask in the moment while he wore an ear-to-ear grin, the Oklahoma Sooners are national champions. None of the 23,248 in attendance on June 22nd, or the fans who watched the Sooners lose their last 4 regular season series and finish conference play with a losing record, could believe it. They could believe it, Johnson said of his team, I promise you, because they believed it. There's no doubt about that. They weren't giving in. OU dominated number 5 overall seed North Carolina 13-2 in Game 3 of the College World Series Finals, winning 10 of its last 11 games to claim its 3rd baseball national title in program history and first since 1994. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of the run was it took everyone, pitching, defense, and offense, and they were firing on all cylinders throughout the postseason. Game 3 was emblematic of that, as CWS Most Outstanding Player Jackson Wiltz collected 3 hits. Star reliever L.J. Mercurius recorded the win after striking out 5 and allowing only 1 earned run in 5 2/3 innings, and 9-hole hitter Kyle Branch finished 3 for 4 with a home run. It was amazing how they came together and started caring a lot about each other, Johnson said. A lot of times we as coaches sit there and talk about, hey, you don't know who is going to get the biggest hit, you don't know who is going to make the biggest play or throw the last pitch of the game or whatever, but it's just about being selfless. Whether it was senior infielder Dayton Taki's walk-off homer to defeat Georgia Tech, LaChance's 18 home runs since April 9th, walk-on Dason Harris's 18 postseason RBIs, starting only freshman pitchers during the CWS, or Branch's Champ Series, there are countless moments from the last month that will live on in OU lore forever. No matter what, the Sooners always believed they could beat anybody, and they were right. We knew that the talent was always in the room, Wiltz said. And that's something that Skip and all the coaches preached to us from day one in the fall, is that this group of guys is special, whether we were playing well or not. We believed that we had the talent in the room to go out and win a national championship. Toki, one of OU's most unlikeliest postseason heroes, who was in and out of the lineup for most of the season before a 10th inning walk-off homer over the Yellow Jackets in the regional round, made him a household name, remembers being told by the coaches in February the Sooners were going to win a national title. As confetti exploded and Johnson was pulled away from a hug and onto the stage to accept the national championship trophy, everyone outside of the OU family finally believed. You can't really describe it unless you've done the things that the Oklahoma Sooners have done, Toki told the Oklahoman. Obviously, they're all really good teams, and I'm not going to take that away from them, but it's not the best players that win, it's the best team. We were the best team, and everyone should think that now, but we've thought that since February. He's an Oklahoma Sooner. During OU's first team meeting this season, winning a national championship was the topic of discussion among the coaches. After the Sooners ran through the Jayhawks to clinch their second CWS appearance in 5 seasons, they talked about winning it all again. OU has been building toward this moment for years. There's nothing better than winning the whole thing, Sooners baseball chief of staff Ryan Gaines told the Oklahoman. I remember in 22 being devastated, watching another team celebrate. So for us to have this moment together is awesome. It's been a steady climb for OU to get back to being a national power since former athletic director Joe Castiglione hired Johnson in 2018. In the 4 seasons before he was hired, the Sooners made the NCAA tournament once. Castiglione, now AD Emeritus, received his fair share of Johnson embraces during the celebrations. He believed in Johnson and the OU baseball program when the going was tough, attendance was inconsistent, and resources were lacking. It's been a long road here for Johnson. A longtime junior college coach at Navarro College, he served as Texas pitching coach under Augie Garrido from 2007 to 2016. Following a year as the Sooners pitching coach in 2017, Castiglione named Johnson head coach in 2018. Johnson has since led OU to 6 NCAA tournament appearances, 2 runs to the CWS, and finally a championship trophy. Just like he didn't hesitate to find others in the heat of the moment after winning a national title, Johnson always deflects his successes to others. Throughout this magical run, he continued to credit OU's prowess to the players, assistant coaches Todd Butler, Russell Raley, and Reggie Wiltlitz, and Gaines, the engine who makes the program go. I couldn't be happier for him, Gaines said. He's a selfless leader. Whenever he's in front of the media, he's never talking about himself, but that's who he is every day. He doesn't look for the spotlight. He cares about others more than himself, and that's why we're here today, because it bleeds into everybody else. Johnson is known as one of the best pitching coaches in the world, but it was his leadership that pushed the Sooners across the finish line. His team played one pitch at a time and took on yesterday's dead mentality. Just over a month ago, OU struggled mightily. OU was a team of destiny. Young to sign $212 million deal with the Wizards. It turns out Trae Young won't be going anywhere just days after he reportedly declined his $49 million player option. Young reportedly plans to sign a 4-year, $212 million contract to remain with the Wizards as the team looks to elevate itself into contention. The Wizards also held the number 1 overall selection in the NBA draft, which kicked off its 2-day proceedings with the first round June 23rd. Young, age 27, played just 15 games last season and averaged 17.9 points and 8.0 assists per game. The Hawks traded him in early January, and Young played just 5 games for Washington as he dealt with a quad injury. The Wizards, who were in a race for the bottom, also didn't press the issue and were happy to let Young and Anthony Davis, another acquisition, recover from their injuries. Now the Wizards can pair Young with Davis, 2024 number 2 overall pick, Alexandra Sarr, and whoever the franchise ends up with in the draft. Young also has the chance to establish himself as the clear leader in the locker room, as the Wizards do have a trio of younger guards who could look to him as a model. Keyshawn George, Tree Johnson, and Bub Carrington. That could be magnified further if the Wizards opt to select Darren Peterson out of Kansas with the top draft selection. On the other hand, if Washington chose to select A.G. Dabansa from BYU, Young's playmaking ability could free up Dabansa to play off the ball more as a slasher. Either way, the Wizards, who finished with the NBA's worst record at 17-65, suddenly appear like a team that's poised to make a leap in the 2026-2027. Young, a 4-time All-Star, led the NBA in assists 2 seasons ago with 11.6 per game. 3-time All-Star Randall relocates to Brooklyn. An NBA trade broke late the night of June 23rd, but not that one, as much of the league was awaiting resolution. With Giannis Antetokounmpo, a 3-team trade has reportedly come through that sends forward Julius Randle from the Minnesota Timberwolves to the Brooklyn Nets. According to ESPN, Randle and Minnesota's number 28 selection in the first round of the 2026 draft are headed to Brooklyn for the number 33 pick to mount to a salary dump, while the Nets are shipping center Nick Claxton to the Chicago Bulls. By trading Randle, the Timberwolves are unloading his $33.3 million salary next season, leaving space for Minnesota to fill out its roster. Guard Ayo Dosunmu, who emerged as an offensive force for the Timberwolves in the playoffs, is set to become an unrestricted free agent once the new league year begins, and the Timberwolves have already made an offer to retain their new star with a 5-year contract after they acquired him before the February trading deadline. Randle, who has spent the last 2 seasons in Minnesota after being traded from the New York Knicks as part of the Karl Anthony Towns blockbuster deal, also has a player option for 2027-28 worth $35.8 million. The 31-year-old averaged 21.1 points, 6.7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1.1 steals per game, while shooting 48.1% from the field in 79 games this past season. The Nets, who have an abundant cap space, add another veteran into their program, and the Bulls shore up their front court after they traded Nikola Vucevic in February. Dosunmu agrees to return to Minnesota on a 5-year deal. Free agent guard Ayo Dosunmu intends to sign a 5-year, $112 million contract to return to the Minnesota Timberwolves with a player option in the 5th season, ESPN reported late Monday night. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Giant Norway star does best Viking impression. The biggest man on the pitch barreled through a distraught defense and toward the helpless goalkeeper. Norway's Erling Haaland, a modern Viking, did his best impression of his ancestors. He invaded the opponent's defensive zone and their minds. The result was predictable. Another World Cup match, another brace, 2 goals for the Manchester City forward, and another Norway victory that sent them through to the knockout round in the country's first World Cup appearance since 1998, 2 years before Haaland was born. I don't know, I think it's my specialty to score goals, Haaland said after Norway's 3-2 victory over Senegal on June 22nd. It's like many other things. I'm just really good at scoring goals. I'm quite lucky. I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, that's just how it is. All Haaland had to do for his first tally of the night was run alongside teammate Martin Odegaard for the length of half the field and take Odegaard's assisting pass into the box with a slide and left-footed finish to make it 2-0 in favor of Norway. It marked the 12th consecutive match in which he has scored for Norway. 10 minutes later, Haaland scored again. This one was a one-timer with his right foot that hit the bottom of the crossbar and bounced in to make it 3-1 after Senegal halved the lead. Haaland strutted toward the sideline like he was a WWE personality during the late 1990s Attitude Era and held his left hand up to his ear as if the 25-year-old was asking for more cheering. Norway ultimately held on for a 3-2 lead with Haaland's scores providing the difference between victory and defeat. More impressive, Haaland easily could have had a hat trick and missed an open net in the first half. His distaste with himself was evident after he hit the near post as he fell to the pitch and slammed both of his fists into the MetLife Stadium grass. In a World Cup that has been buoyed by the performance of its stars, Haaland has stacked multiple top-tier performances. Against Iraq in the opener June 16th, Haaland scored 2 goals for the red, white, and blue Scandinavian version in a 4-1 victory. For the second time in less than a week, Haaland, France's Kylian Mbappé, and Lionel Messi of Argentina scored multiple times on the same day. The world will watch as Mbappé and Haaland square off on June 26 in the final match of the Group 1 play for both teams. Haaland, speaking to Fox after the match, had some thoughts about the matchup. Honestly, I don't care too much. We're through, he told Fox. We managed to get through, which is incredible, so I couldn't care too much about that game. They're probably going to win against us. They're probably going to win the whole tournament. Later, Haaland was asked if this could be the Haaland World Cup. The 6'5" blonde-haired striker answered in a team-centric manner. It depends on what you mean with that, he said. To qualify for the first time in 28 years. And going through the group stage, yes, I would say so. To win the World Cup, absolutely not. Let's be realistic here and let's be happy. Every single Norwegian on the planet today. Messi breaks more records. Lionel Messi turns 39 years old this week, but he's still rewriting the record books. Most World Cup goals, men's or women in history, 18. Most World Cup matches won, 18. Most World Cup games played, 28. Most minutes played, 2,489. All of those records were broken by the legendary forward after he scored both of Argentina's goals in its 2-0 over Austria on June 22nd to clinch a spot in the knockout stage. He couldn't have had another hat trick, too, if it weren't for a penalty kick miss in the 12th minute. I don't know what else to say, you know. Argentina manager Lionel Scaloni said after the match, you almost get tired of talking about him. The legendary forward has scored all 5 of Argentina's goals in both of its wins to open the 2026 World Cup, scoring a hat trick against Algeria before his brace against Austria. Simply put, he's a man on a mission right now, and it's leading, perhaps improbably at nearly 39 years old. Argentina in hopes of back-to-back World Cup wins to likely end his career at the tournament. The announced sellout crowd of 70,649 at AT&T Stadium, called Dallas Stadium by FIFA, held their breath after Messi was awarded a penalty kick after VAR showed Lautaro Martinez was fouled in the box. In the early minutes, it resulted in an almost surefire moment for the goals record, with Messi set up a few feet from the goal, but he missed wide right, showing the arguable greatest footballer ever is indeed human. But in the most messy of ways, he responded with 2 surgical goals, first in the 35th minute and again in extra time after weaving through 5 Austria defenders and sneaking in the shot through a narrow lane. The first goal broke the Men's World Cup scoring record set by Miroslav Klose of Germany in 2014. The second broke the men's and women's record set by Brazil's Marta in 2019. There were moments when I was really angry about missing the penalty, but I was able to make up for it, Messi said after the game. It's only fitting for one of the sport's all-time greats to sit alone at the top of the multiple World Cup records. He showed today he is on level of his own and that he is the greatest, said Austria manager Ralf Rangnick. PGA Tour announces sweeping changes. With Tiger Woods helping to lead the way, sweeping changes are coming to the PGA Tour. Everything from a 2-track system to a new normal of 90 tour cards to match play for the Tour Championship, and the end of sponsor exemptions, the Tour announced the morning of June 23rd. Tour CEO Brian Rolapp convened the Future Competitions Committee as one of his first acts in August after coming over from the NFL to revamp the Tour's competitive model. Woods, who chaired the FCC until he took an indefinite leave from professional golf to seek treatment for his health, opened the press conference. It's planned to define the optimal competitive model that enhances the PGA Tour's value to fans, players, and partners was approved on Monday during the Tour's board meeting. What is Track 1? Track 1 is to be called Championship and consist of 23-24 events, offering purses of $20 million and fields of 120 players. The top 90 on the season-long points list will keep their status for the following year, while 20 players will be promoted from Track 2, which is to be known as the Challenger, and consist of 20 events with purses of $4 million. The Tour Championship will get another facelift, shifting to match play, and will be held at rotating venues and elite courses. This work was bigger than any one player or person. It was about designing the strongest possible version of the PGA Tour for the future generations of fans and players. Woods said in a statement, "From the beginning, the committee's focus was on delivering a better experience for our fans, while creating a model that best sets up the tour, its players, and its partners for long-term success and stability." Monumental changes are coming to the PGA Tour in 2028, and included in those is a new promotion and relegation system that will have players trying to maintain eligibility in the Championship Series, while those in the Challenger Series work to move their way up. The Championship Series and Challenger Series will utilize separate point lists, with each rewarding winning, top finishes, and prioritizing making the cut. Players will earn points only within the series for which they are eligible. The Championship Series will utilize a single point system across every event, unlike it is today with 4 types of events offering different point allocations. The Challenger Series will award points in a consistent manner, with elevated points offered for majors, as well as events played during Championship Series off weeks. Championship Series players will not be eligible for Challenger Series events. Brian Rolapp voted as 5th Tour Commissioner. Another vote that happened Monday will make Brian Rolapp the 5th Commissioner of the PGA Tour, taking over the spot Jay Monahan has held since 2017. Rolapp will remain the PGA Tour CEO and add Commissioner to its title. Match Play Tour Championship at Premier Courses. For the first time, Match Play will be used to settle the winner of the season-ending Tour Championship beginning in 2028. That topic seemed dead in the water just last year when the Tour removed starting strokes but opted to stop short of a more radical move on the grounds that it didn't make sense to play stroke play throughout the entire FedEx Cup season and then shift to match play for the finale. But when Rolapp came on board a year ago, he said he wanted to start with a blank sheet and make the playoff system easier to understand and more compelling. On Tuesday, the Tour announced that the board signed off on an introduction of match play into the postseason. A new look Tour Championship will be contested across a rotation of prestigious courses, many of which the PGA Tour would play for the first time, the Tour said in a release. Shaking up the playoffs, which may include shrinking to 2 events, will include some venue shifts from Memphis for the FedEx St. Jude Championship, rotating venues and cities for the BMW Championship, and Atlanta for the Tour Championship, with hopes of adding a big West Coast finale for bigger TV ratings. According to a source, the players on the FCC drove the bus on the playoff structure, particularly Adam Scott, who previously told Golf Week that making the Tour Championship a more prestigious event was the motivating factor in his interest to be a player director on the board, and Keith Mitchell, who finished T4 at the U.S. Open on Sunday. One thing that he made abundantly clear to Rollap and the independent directors: venue matters. The players want to take the playoff events to iconic venues. While this may be a reach, the Tour was investigating the possibility of Cypress Point in Pebble Beach, California, which did allow limited spectators to the private club for last year's Walker Cup, and Pine Valley, another acclaimed private club on the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border that has a future Walker Cup on the books. If either of these scenarios were to happen, it would be a scaled-down version of a tour event, and what a source described as more of a TV show in the vein of some of the silly season events. Think big, think TV, a source said. The 9-member FCC committee is made up of 6 player representatives: Cantlay, Maverick McNeely, Keith Mitchell, Scott Camillo Villegas, and Woods, chairman, and 3 strategic business advisors: Joe Gorder, John Henry, and Theo Epstein. Details on the format and expected locations of the season-ending events beginning in 2028 will be provided at a later date, the Tour said. MLB won't discipline Giants trio over ball caps. MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred told Senator Josh Hawley that the 3 San Francisco Giants pitchers who wore Bible verses on their Pride Night caps were never disciplined and never would have been. Manfred defended the league's warning as routine enforcement. In a June 19th letter answering the Missouri Republican, Manfred ruled out any discipline for the pitchers and put the root of the controversy on the Giants. The players were neither fined nor disciplined, nor will they ever be, Manfred wrote. The Giants have worn the Pride emblem under a grandfathered exemption since 2023, one of the 2 clubs allowed to keep it after the league stopped permitting special uniforms for most celebration days. The deal carried one condition: no player would be required to wear the cap. This year, that exception somehow did not reach the clubhouse, Manfred said. The Giants' communication with players was inadequate and not clear. Some pitchers did not understand that they could wear the standard cap and wrote messages on the Pride version instead. They wore the altered caps the full game. The oral warning went out afterward, before the league learned of the team's lapse. Manfred defended the underlying rule as content neutral. It bars players from writing, attaching, or affixing any message on a uniform or equipment, and he said it has applied to notes as ordinary as a message to a player's mother or a tribute to a deceased friend. The league does not want players to become messengers for political or social causes while in uniform, he said. The rule has to apply to every message to survive a legal challenge. He also said that MLB agrees players should not be compelled to take part in a celebration that violates their sincere religious beliefs. The response lands amid mounting legal pressure. The Justice Department referred MLB to the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission on June 19th over possible religious discrimination. Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier opened his own investigation a day later and subpoenaed the league's uniform records due July 23rd. Hawley had threatened to subpoena Manfred and put MLB's antitrust exemption under review. The incident was on June 12th at Oracle Park. Starter Landon Raup and relievers J.T. Brubaker and Ryan Walker wrote Gen 912-16 on their rainbow caps, a reference to God's covenant after the flood. A 4th pitcher, Sam Hentges, apparently knew of the exception and wore a standard cap. The Giants lost to the Cubs 5-1. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today. On the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, the time is 45 minutes after the hour. KISS legends welcome next generation in Tech and Sons. When Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley enter a room, people pay attention. It's not only the towering status of Simmons or the black velvet jacket cool of Stanley, but their presence as legends. The pair visited USA Today's office the morning of a momentous occasion, their induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, where they were immortalized alongside 2026 classmates Taylor Swift, Kenny Loggins, Alanis Morissette, and others. I say at this point in my life, if you love me, let me know, Stanley, age 74, says with a smile about receiving the accolade with Simmons. Don't save it for the eulogy. Don't save it for the obituary. If there are accolades, if there are rewards, bring them my way. Simmons, who would miss the induction ceremony because of an undisclosed family emergency, the band's representative affirmed all is well, was also equal parts honored and awed. We never planned for this. Where we are sitting, not too far down the street on 10th East 23rd Street, four knuckleheads got together in a rat-infested loft with no experience, no background, but something brought us together for no logical reason whatever, Simmons, age 76, says, and we decided to put together the band we never saw on stage. In December, it will be 3 years since KISS took its final bow as a touring entity, saying goodbye amid flashes of pyro and drizzled fake blood at Madison Square Garden. It was surreal and very emotional for a lot of reasons. The arena was filled with ghosts, Stanley says. I could see my dad and mom out there at our first show looking at me somewhere between horror and stunned. I could see Gene's mom over there, so yeah, the memories that came back, it really was like seeing a quick flash of your life going before you. Despite that end-of-the-road tour living up to its name, the KISS band will continue most prominently in Las Vegas, where Simmons and Stanley already have this year's KISS Cruise, landlocked in Vegas, set for November 13th to the 15th, and reported $200 million show and venue ready to break ground. The pair shared some details about their upcoming projects, as well as how sons Evan Stanley and Nick Simmons are forging a musical path as Stanley Simmons. KISS' most surprising hit wasn't even released as a single. In July 1976, KISS followed their stomp and shout hits Rock and Roll All Night and Shout It Out Loud with another fist pumper primed for the fan base, the guitar cruncher Detroit Rock City. The hard rock song serviced to radio as its latest single from the Destroyer album contained the ballad Beth, sung by drummer Peter Criss, as the B-side of the record, typically considered a throwaway track. DJs turned the record over and Beth became this hit that we never ever expected, Stanley says. It's ultimately up to the people to decide what they like. Conversely, the band expected the 1992 power ballad Every Time I Look at You from their Revenge album to be a hit, but the only place the song barely charted was in Sweden. A hit takes more than a great song, Stanley says. It takes great promotion. And there were certain times when our record company was more enamored with the flavor of the week than us. KISS's sons also rise. A couple of years ago, Evan Stanley and Nick Simmons, the progeny of Paul and Gene, respectively, realized they had a musical connection as well as the casual friendship they'd established over the years. They grew up together as little knuckleheads and watched their dads at work, Simmons says. They both went off on different musical journeys. Evan became a really accomplished blues guitar player and had a band, and Nick was in this ethereal Pink Floyd meets Radiohead group. Stanley Simmons, as they are now known, have released several songs, including the melody-driven Cellophane and the harmony-rich ballad Temporary Love. Paul Stanley says he and Gene Simmons have passed along the advice that a work ethic applies to everything. And is there nepotism involved? Sure, Stanley says, but an open door doesn't equate to instant success. Look, life's not fair. The playing field's not even. But you can introduce your children and you want the best for them, but the rest is up to them. They fall on their faces if they don't have what is necessary. Some people have said to them, why don't you become KISS match? They'd rather take a bullet in the head than to be junior KISS. KISS avatars are on the way in a massive Vegas setting. At the end of their final show in 2023, the onstage screen blasted a message: a new KISS era starts now, followed by digital avatars of the band playing God Gave Rock and Roll to You. That technology, Stanley and Simmons says, is almost archaic now. The backstory is that Swedish company Pop House Entertainment bought KISS, Stanley says, from the logo to the makeup to songs. Pop House is renowned for its groundbreaking ABBA Voyage Avatar show in London, the blueprint for Kiss's plans. What we're doing will absolutely blow people away. It's as real as you and us sitting here. It's immersive. It will be mind-boggling, Stanley says. In addition to the show, a customized venue at a reported cost of $200 million is being built in Las Vegas. You have to build an arena to make sure everybody's seat is the perfect viewing distance and angle, Stanley says, but quite honestly, I don't think anybody's going to sit. Add Simmons, there's a motion picture, there's a script, there are directors. We're like that caterpillar that looks like it's at the end of its life and goes into its cocoon and comes out in the most beautiful that it's ever been. So this massive project will essentially guarantee that Kiss lives on forever? As well we should, Stanley says, matter of fact and at our best. I found You so upsetting and yet so watchable. It seems as if the new Netflix adaptation of Harlan Coben novel will always find you. The streamer has gone all in on the best-selling author's work with 12 series in multiple languages based on his huge canon of thriller books and already available. And now with I Will Find You now streaming, there's a 13th entry on the list, and it's the highest profile series so far with bigger stars and a hugely gripping story. Known for twisty psychological thrillers with dark themes, tragedies, time jumps, and lightning-fast pacing, Coben's books and shows have captivated audiences for years. Find You is along all those lines, the story of David Burrows, Sam Worthington of the Avatar films, wrongly convicted for the brutal murder of his 3-year-old son, only to discover the boy might have been alive the whole time. With the help of his journalist ex-sister-in-law Rachel Britt Lauer Severance and her rich ex-boyfriend Hayden Milo Ventimiglia, David breaks laws and Jaws in his single-minded pursuit of the truth about his son and the people who kidnapped him and faked his death. Immediately Find You is one of the darkest and most upsetting stories in Coben's TV canon. David not only is accused of murdering his toddler, but also of beating him to death with a baseball bat to the point where the body can only be identified with DNA. The prosecution claims David did this unspeakable crime while in the grips of a night terror, and his friends and family seemingly believe that story. It is gruesome and grievous and hard to stomach as a viewer, even as the evidence mounts that Matthew, the boy, is still alive. After all, some poor child had to take his place as the victim. But the seriousness of the crime explains David's intensely driven behavior as he breaks out of prison, leads the FBI on a multi-state manhunt, and pursues the people he believes are responsible. It also explains why upstanding citizens such as Rachel and Hayden risk their lives and freedom to help him save his son. Worthington, who has graced movie screens for 15 years behind blue CGI in James Cameron's Avatar films, has the chiseled features and furrowed brow required to play a man this desperate and haunted. He's well matched by Lauer, who gets to break out of her Severance office prison to play a dogged but also haunted reporter who must decide that real people's lives are more important than getting the next big story. Ventimiglia, a natural magnetic presence in any TV series he's in, barely has to try to play Rachel's suave millionaire ex, willing to do anything for her, even break the law. David is pursued by two upstanding and persistent FBI agents, Max Williams, Chai McBride, and Sarah Greer. Logan Browning, who eschew boring stereotypes about law enforcement as they chase their fugitive. They believe, as did a jury of David's peers, that David is guilty of this horrible crime, but they don't ignore evidence that suggests there's a deeper conspiracy going on. The show builds great tension with their righteousness up against David's. There's a part of you that may want these people to team up and go after the real villains of the story, even if that means David goes back to prison. When you sign up to watch a Coben adaptation, you know you're going to be sucked into a fast-moving story that grabs you with tentacles of twists and turns until you finish all the episodes as fast as you can. 8 compelling installments in this case. Find You meets all those expectations and adds a little extra something with such a stellar cast. You'll find yourself watching without even thinking twice. Senior living basks in a brighter TV spotlight. If you turn on Netflix these days, you might think moving into a retirement community would include espionage, murder solving and alien invasions, plus really nice facilities with great food. Because in the worlds of popular shows and movies on the streamer, including A Man on the Inside, The Burrows, and The Thursday Murder Club, all currently streaming, senior living facilities are places of adventure, discovery, and community. They are bright, shiny, and expensive buildings with vibrant residents ready to either solve crimes or fight aliens. They are like any other fictional setting on TV, from high schools to hospitals to 1980s suburbia, ripe for compelling storytelling and great characters. But are they accurate portrayals of the nearly 30,600 assisted living facilities in the United States? Is this the life being led by the 9.5 million Americans living in a long-term or post-acute care facility minus the aliens? Older populations have been left out by a youth-obsessed Hollywood for decades. Now that this population is finally being highlighted more directly in media, what should these shows and movies be portraying? The fact that there are shows like The Man on the Inside or The Burrows that are highlighting this population of people is a very positive thing, says Julia Glassman, founder of Inside Nature, a company that helps connect senior populations with green spaces. It's all about representation, right? And there are quite a lot of people who are afraid of the elderly or afraid of aging. They're afraid of what they don't know. In Man, Burrows, and Murder, the characters may be part of the fantastical genre, spy, sci-fi, and murder mystery, respectively. But the heart of all three is the relationships among the characters who meet and form bonds in the facilities in which they choose to spend their golden years. In many facilities, there are true relationships such as these. I witness this almost daily through my experience working with the elderly population, says Manu Segal, a geriatrics physician in Delaware. Close friends develop strong bonds around routine and shared interests, and these types of supportive social connections have proven to be beneficial to a person's overall mental and physical health. Loneliness is a serious threat to older adults' health, and having meaningful relationships helps alleviate this. The sense of community and joy portrayed by Helen Mirren, Pierce Bronson, and Ben Kingsley solving murders in the British countryside in Murder, or Alfred Molina and Gina Davis fighting the supernatural in Burrows, all is stark contrast to the ways retirement, nursing, and care homes often are portrayed in media. From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to an episode of The X-Files, nursing homes can often be places of abuse, fear, decrepitude, and depression. Historically, nursing homes have often been portrayed as gloomy places where seniors are isolated and unhappy, says Ali Ahmad, spokesman for Virginians advocating for seniors. He praises more positive portrayals, but feels as if they are all missing the true scope of these facilities, particularly what the realities are in assisted living and skilled nursing facilities. What these TV shows and movies usually miss is the complexity of medical issues impacting facility residents who are cared for by highly skilled nurses, their assistants, and staff. Minor characters in these shows and films require more advanced medical care, whether that's memory care for dementia or other conditions, but their stories are often defined by that need of care. Ultimately, experts believe there is a great value in these shows offering a bigger picture of life in old age, but that picture is not quite filled in just yet. The most significant contrast between reality and what is typically shown on television is that real life rarely depicts as much drama, but also offers far greater meaning, says Segal, the physician. Older adults continue to evolve, grow, and show curiosity about the world, but there are those who feel that by the time an individual reaches age 70, their life has become emotionally flat. This could not be further from the truth. You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Wednesday, June 24th. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Claudia, and I thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 7 of To Rescue the American Spirit by Bret Baier. Following that, at 3 o'clock is Healthy Living, and at 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,